The house was silent, the kind of silence that felt heavy, like it wasn't peace but absence. In the sprawling mansion that stood on the edge of the city, there was laughter once, but now the only sounds that echoed through its long marble hallways were the faint hum of electronics and the occasional shuffle of hurried footsteps. Thomas Reynolds, a self-made millionaire and one of the most powerful real estate moguls in the country, sat in his office with his usual grim expression. His desk was stacked with files, his phone never stopped buzzing, and yet none of it mattered to him the way one thing did: the quiet boy in the room upstairs. That boy was his son, Ethan. Ethan was 8 years old, with soft brown hair that always seemed to fall into his eyes and a world inside him that Thomas had never been able to reach. When Ethan was 2, he had been diagnosed with autism. At first, Thomas thought it was something he could fix. Like a broken deal, a financial loss, or an unfinished building project. He threw money at therapists, at specialists, at centers that promised miracles. But over the years, hope slowly gave way to despair. Ethan had spoken his first words when he was just a toddler, "Mama," and "Ball," but after his mother passed away in a tragic car accident when he was 4, Ethan's world closed in completely. He hadn't spoken a word in years. Thomas had everything money could buy, but what he wanted most, his son's voice, his son's laughter, remained unreachable. He blamed himself. He blamed fate. And, more often than not, he blamed the people around him for not doing enough. That morning, frustration had already been clawing at him when he walked past the playroom and froze. There, on the floor, sat Rosa, the maid. She had been with the household only 3 weeks, hired through an agency. She was in her late 20s, with dark hair tied in a messy bun and kind eyes that often lingered on Ethan with more warmth than Thomas could ever summon. But what caught Thomas's attention wasn't her presence. It was what she was doing. She was blowing bubbles. Cheap plastic bottle in hand, she dipped the wand, puckered her lips, and blew. Iridescent bubbles floated across the room, shimmering in the morning light. They caught on the furniture, drifted in the air, and some popped gently on Ethan's cheeks. Ethan's eyes were wide, following them. His small hand stretched out, trying to catch one before it burst. And Rosa, she laughed. A full, unrestrained laugh, as if this simple act was the most magical thing in the world. Thomas's chest tightened, not with warmth but with anger. Was this what he paid her for? He hired professionals to look after his son, not someone to sit on the carpet and waste time with childish games. He stormed into the room, startling them both. "What is this?" His voice was sharp, cutting through the air. Rosa looked up, blinking. "Sir, I was just. You were just wasting time." Thomas snapped. "I pay you to care for him, not to blow soap bubbles like some teenager babysitting for pocket money." Rosa opened her mouth as if to defend herself, but Ethan's hand tugged at her sleeve gently, his eyes still fixed on the bubbles. Thomas saw it, but it didn't soften him. "Pack your things," he said coldly. "You're done here." The room went silent. Rosa looked at Ethan, then back at Thomas, her lips parting in protest, but she saw the finality in his glare. Slowly, she nodded, blinking back tears. She set the bubble bottle down on the carpet, gave Ethan one last smile, and stood. Within an hour, she was gone. That night, Thomas sat in his study with a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring at the fire. He told himself he'd done the right thing. Discipline was important. Routine was important. His son needed structured care, not frivolous distractions. He was a businessman, he built skyscrapers, closed billion-dollar deals, made the impossible happen. If his son was ever going to get better, it wouldn't be because of soap bubbles. And yet, as the flames flickered, he couldn't shake the image of Ethan's face in that moment, the way his eyes had lit up, his small hand reaching out into the air as though trying to catch joy itself. For years, Thomas hadn't seen that look. He tried to drown the thought with another sip of whiskey, but it clung to him like a shadow. The next morning, Thomas avoided the playroom. He buried himself in work calls and meetings until late afternoon, when he realized he hadn't checked on Ethan. Reluctantly, he climbed the stairs. He found his son sitting on the floor, the same bubble bottle clutched tightly in his hands. Ethan was turning it over and over, his fingers tracing the bright label. Thomas froze at the doorway. His heart thudded. He hadn't realized Rosa had left it behind. He wanted to take it away, toss it in the trash, but something stopped him. Instead, he stepped into the room quietly and watched. Ethan held the wand, dipped it into the soapy liquid, and brought it to his lips. He blew, but nothing came out. Just spit and frustration. He tried again, harder this time. The wand stayed empty. His little brow furrowed, and he let out a sound, a low whine of disappointment. Thomas felt his throat tighten. He wanted to help, but he didn't know how. He hadn't blown bubbles since he was a boy. But something in Ethan's eyes, the longing, the determination, moved him. Slowly, he walked over, sat down awkwardly on the carpet and took the wand. "Here," he said softly, though he knew Ethan wouldn't respond. He dipped the wand, raised it to his lips, and blew. Bubbles filled the air. Shimmering, floating, drifting. Ethan's eyes widened again, his lips parting in silent wonder. His hands reached out, chasing them, and for the first time in years, Thomas heard a sound from his son, a sharp, high-pitched giggle. It was brief, fragile, but it was laughter. Thomas felt something break inside him. He laughed too, a little choked, watching his son spin slowly, his small hands waving as the bubbles popped against his skin. And then it happened. Ethan stopped, stared at a bubble hovering just inches from his face, and whispered, almost too softly to hear. "Pop." The wand slipped from Thomas's hand. He stared at his son, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. "Ethan," he whispered. Ethan looked at him, eyes bright, and repeated it. "Pop." It was the first word he had spoken in years. Thomas's vision blurred with tears. He hadn't let himself cry in so long. He pulled Ethan into his arms, holding him close, his body trembling. "Yes," he choked out. "Pop." "That's right, buddy. Pop." From that day forward, the bubble bottle never left the playroom. And Thomas never forgot the woman he had fired so hastily. Weeks later, after endless attempts to track her down, he found Rosa working at a diner on the outskirts of the city. She looked startled when he walked in, but before she could speak, Thomas did something he wasn't used to: he apologized. Not just with words, but with the sincerity of a man who had been humbled. "Rosa," he said, his voice thick with emotion, "I owe you more than I can ever repay. Because of you, because of something as simple as bubbles," my son spoke again. Her eyes filled with tears, and for the first time in years, Thomas saw not just the kindness of another human being, but the reminder that love and healing don't always come through money, structure, or control. Sometimes, they come through the simplest, smallest gestures of joy. From then on, Rosa was no longer just a maid. She became a part of the Reynolds family. And every evening, as the sun set over the mansion, the playroom would glow with color as bubbles floated through the air, each one carrying laughter, hope, and the promise that even the quietest voices can one day find their way back into the world. And Thomas, the man who once thought he could build everything with money, finally learned the truth: sometimes, the most priceless things are born from kindness, patience, and the willingness to see magic in the smallest of things.